update with Dr. Lawrence Yoon. This event today is sponsored by Prospect Inspection Services, so thank you so much for the support. You guys have been great in supporting our convention, so thank you very much. With that, I'm going to dive right in. Dr. Lawrence Yoon oversees the research group at NAR. He supervises and is responsible for a wide range of research activity, including NAR's existing home sales statistics, affordability index, and home buyers and sellers profile report. He regularly provides commentary on real estate market trends for the 1.4 million realtors. I think we have a little more than 1.4 now. Dr. Yoon creates NAR's forecasts and participates in many economic forecasting panels, among them the Blue Chip Council and the Wall Street Journal Forecasting Survey. He also participates in the Industrial Economist Discussion Group at the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University. He appears regularly on financial news outlets and is a frequent speaker at real estate conferences. He also appeared as a guest on C-SPAN's Washington Journal and has testified before the United States Congress. Welcome, Dr. Yoon.
Thank you, Wesley, for inviting. And hello, Delaware. Certainly, Delaware, I try to visit at least once a year just because of the great beaches that you have there. But now, in a pandemic world, I guess people are still coming to the beach, but it's a work from home for many residents. So office workers of Philadelphia, maybe Washington, D.C., or even as far away as New York City, maybe searching for a home out in Delaware, but given the work from home potential out there. Well, great to be with you all. This pandemic period, something we will certainly remember for a long period, unique in our lifetime or unique in many generations. But one positive silver lining to the pandemic has been the housing sector. What a boom that we encountered. Now, we are no longer at the surge. The surge period is over, but the housing market has certainly turned quite positively during the pandemic. But the question is, what's going to happen next? Are we essentially over in terms of this boom? Mortgage rates are set to rise. Furthermore, the first-time buyers are struggling to get into the market. So how do we see over the next 12 months, 24 months? I'm going to put the PowerPoint slide onto the screen and then go from there. So bear with me as I do that. Hold one second. All right, so here we are. So let's go to the very first slide. If something is amiss technology-wise, this video screening, I guess Wesley will let me know or someone will let me know. But I'm assuming everything is a go and very good. So here we go.
You're good to go.
This chart is quite striking. The blue line represents the total number of birth certificate within the 50 states, while the red line represents the death certificate. So in a typical year, we have about 4 million live births in the US. Note how it's been trending down, and it's been trending down somewhat even before the pandemic, but then we really began to go down during the pandemic. If you remember the first few months of the pandemic when we were stuck at home, lockdown, highways wide open, as everyone were staying home, people were saying we may have a baby boom because what do you do at home other than make babies? Well, the economic history as well as the economic incentives say that in times of uncertainty, people actually do not want to bring new child to the world. So we saw the birth rate decline during the Great Depression of the 1930s, really harsh times. So the birth rate declined at that period. And similarly, during COVID, because of the economic uncertainty as well as health uncertainty, people began to have fewer pregnancy and fewer births in the country. Red line is even more striking, the death certificate. This represents total number of death accounting for everything: automobile accident, drug overdose. In fact, in San Francisco this past year, twice as many people died of drug overdose compared to COVID. The heart attacks, old age, you name it, all the deaths. But look how it's rising during the COVID months. So without a doubt, COVID is contributing to the overall increase in the number of deaths. I was in DC just yesterday, and there are about 700,000 small white flags near Washington Monument, each flag representing the death of COVID. And the numbers keep rising. So you can see in the chart, very unique situation in America where the birth and death matches up. Consequently, we don't have population growth just from this chart. Now, of course, we do have population growth because we have international border crossing, legal immigration. Americans are very welcoming, historically. Today, most people are very welcoming of the legal immigration, people who went through the normal process. We are very uncomfortable about what's happening in the southern border, illegal immigration that's happening, but that's also contributing to the population growth. And then the refugees coming in from Afghanistan, we are certainly supportive of people who helped out the U.S. soldiers, but there may be few people who may not have been vetted properly. But overall, U.S. population is still rising, even though within the U.S., the birth and the death rate is essentially matching up. This is a census projection of population in America before COVID. So I'm sure they will have to change some of the numbers for 2021 as well as 2020. But aside from that, hopefully sometime in 2022, things go back pretty much back to normal. Maybe in-person meeting in Dover Downs, which I have been with Delaware Realtors, or I understand that maybe you will change the venue location to the beach area. But we hope that we all get back to normal such that this projection pretty much become accurate over the long haul. Because we need population growth to assure that housing demand remains strong. In countries where population is declining, real estate values are actually declining. I mean, we saw that in former East Germany. When Germany reunited, many people from East Germany moved into the West Germany where the jobs were, and the real estate value plunged out in the East Germany. We see that in some of the factory town in Ohio, like Youngstown, Ohio. Real estate value, typical home, about $100,000. I mean, you can get many homes for less than $100,000 in Youngstown as population is moving out of the city, factory shut down. So we need population increases to assure healthy real estate market, and the census is projecting essentially long-term population growth. But this was before COVID. But assuming we get some sense of normalcy in 2022, maybe we get back on this path. Interesting part of the population, if one looks at by each of the age category. So this shows how many people in each of the age category. Very few people in the 90s. It's hard. If you made it to the 90s, congratulations. You lived a good, healthy life. But as you can see, there's a sizable millennial generation, which is actually larger than baby boomers. That light blue shaded area versus the orange bars. I put two red lines to indicate some couple of critical points. One red bar is age 65, typical retirement age. So what you see is that we will be facing a large number of retirees in the upcoming years. So if you can visualize this graph as being an ocean wave and moving steadily towards right, you can see that it's going to click 65, 65, 65 as the graph is moving towards right and more people going into retirement. This will benefit Delaware because you do get retirees coming into your area because of the beaches and affordability, especially from northeastern, more expensive metro markets. The other red bar is age 31 or 32, I forget exactly, but that is the typical age of a first-time buyer, home buyer. And it is at the maximum currently. So we should be facing a maximum number of first-time buyer given the age condition. If we miss it, well, the next and the following year still looks to be very, very solid. But we are at the peak age in terms of the first-time buyer condition. Now, let me turn to the home sales market. So for the home sales, the red horizontal line that you see is the best estimate of the home sales activity before pandemic. So when we had the lockdown in March, April last year, you see that home sales are plunging downwards. But when the economy reopened, quite a surprise. Home sales going way above pre-pandemic levels and staying up there. Surge, multiple offers, prices rising rapidly. But now you see the home sales have come down again, but it's settling down at above pre-pandemic activity. So even though it's no longer the surge, it is still above pre-pandemic. That's the closing activity. This is a pending contract. How many pending sales, which means closing in autumn months? October, November. It actually increased back in August, which is implying that this autumn season will be comfortably above pre-pandemic. And given that we are no longer at the surge, it will not match up with the last year condition, but it could be the second best autumn season in the past 20 years. So this autumn looks to be, one of the better autumn home selling year based on the pending contracts. One thing that is not moving up, interestingly, is mortgage applications. So again, red line showing pre-pandemic conditions, and you see the lockdown decline, then the surge above the red line, then things settling down. But note how it's settling down below pre-pandemic. So something appears to be amiss, something a little out of whack. Mortgage application below pre-pandemic, while home sales activity above pre-pandemic. So what's going on? Well, it is cash. We are at the elevated cash levels. So some home purchases, in fact, 23% of transactions does not require mortgage or was not taken out with mortgage. It's all cash transactions. Now, some people may have gotten lucky on cryptocurrency and say, look, I have a wealth, I'm going to cash in my crypto and buy a home. So that could be a reason. Or before the recent stock market wobble, stock market was running at all-time high, and some people felt that they can cash out on their stock market and buy a home. So that could be another reason. But I think the key reason is multiple offers that occurred back in spring and last year. Many people were bid out. Multiple offers, by definition, means one winner and multiple losers. And those losers are saying, at least people who lost out on the bid, I should not use the word loser, people who are trying to buy a home, they have done well successfully in their life. But people who have lost out on their bid are saying, look, I want to win the next bid. And only way to stand out is to offer all cash. So they're becoming very creative in how they're gathering cash. Maybe they're borrowing from friends and family members temporarily. Or maybe they're borrowing from their retirement account, get the cash, buy the home, and after they buy the home, they do refinance. So essentially they're getting mortgage after they purchase a home. But interestingly, cash level remain elevated, which is the reason why home sales are above pre-pandemic, even though mortgage application is running below pre-pandemic. First-time buyers is a bad news because the age chart show we are at the peak number of people who are in their 31, 32 years old. They should be buying a home. yet the share of the first-time buyers are at 2-year low in essence. So why are the first-time buyers shying away from the market? And I would say that they are not changing their desire. The desire, aspiration to own a property, I think still remains strong in my view. The reason why the first-time buyer share is shrinking down is simply it has become more costly to become homeowners. Monthly payment at the prevailing mortgage rate and the median home price shows that first-time buyers, their monthly payment would have been about $1,000 per month at a national median price. Then it's shot up because home prices have risen so much that low interest rate is no longer helping. So because of the higher cost of becoming first-time buyer, they're simply priced out. And that is why it is so critical to have increased supply, more construction, so that prices remain manageable, giving chance to the first-time buyers. This is the price trend of Philadelphia, Wilmington metro market along with Dover. Dover is slightly affordable compared to Philadelphia region. So what you see is that the prices, which really did not change for almost a decade, from year 2008 all the way to 2019, prices were really moving sideways. Then you see suddenly spiking upwards during the pandemic. As the demand surge and also the lack of inventory, particularly the lack of starter home inventory, has really pushed up prices much higher. Consequently, some first-time buyers getting priced out. Just reading the graph, before pandemic, median price in the Wilmington region looks to be about $200,000, a little above $200,000, but now it is $300,000. So you see the difference in the median price. Because prices have risen so much, it's creating a divide in America. The green line represents total real estate valuation in America. So prices have risen, therefore total asset valuation of real estate has risen along with it. According to Federal Reserve, this is the Federal Reserve data. Interesting is that mortgage debt, as represented by the red line, has really not increased all that much, even though home values have risen. Thanks to the fact that we don't have those risky mortgages, subprime lending, or easy mortgage credit, that people really need to qualify. They need to meet the standards before they can get a mortgage. And hence, this gap has opened up between green and red. That is the housing wealth. So there's a substantial housing wealth in the country. Hypothetically, if home prices were to decline 5%, 10%, it's not going to cause financial market damage, unlike what happened back in 2008. If you remember, when home values declined, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, financial crisis. People are really scared at that time, massive job losses. This time around, if home prices hypothetically was to decline, I don't think prices will decline, but let's say it was to decline, it is not going to filter into the financial system because there's sizable buffer room to absorb price decline without causing any damage. Simply put, your past clients, they will not be underwater situation even if the prices were to decline 5, 10%. So we are in a clearly comfortable position related to the housing market. If we divide that wealth, homeowners and renters, everything you own minus everything you owe, you see a sizable difference in wealth between homeowners and renters. This includes everything: money in the bank, the retirement funds, but for many middle-class families, housing wealth is their largest portion of their wealth, especially when people are ready to retire. Once they paid off their 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, their home value is their wealth. So you can see that homeowners' wealth is substantially larger, official data from the Federal Reserve is the blue bar, 2019. They don't have the data for 2021, so I just put an estimate based on recent price trend, and you can see quite a substantial difference in wealth between homeowners and renters on average. I know that there are some renters who are doing very well, and some other homeowners who may be barely positive, but on average, this is what the data looks like. Now, intuitively, you already know this. Suburbs are doing much better than city centers. So downtown Philadelphia, some condominiums or inner counties, single-family homes, prices are rising. Downtown Wilmington, prices are rising. But in the outlying counties, prices are rising even stronger. So you can see on the median price change in the outlying suburbs at 10% versus the central cities at 6.7%. Or even the square footage, percent change in the square footage, the dollar amount is rising more strongly in the outlying regions. So it's the suburb boom. Central cities are still doing reasonably well. It's just that suburbs are outperforming, and this work from home situation has clearly helped that. And also in the initial months of the COVID, people said, I want to get out of condo. I don't want to share elevators. Who knows who touched the buttons. And people did not know about social distancing. Vaccine was unavailable. So, people said, I want a single family home out in the suburbs. So that also contributed. But the contribution now is people don't have to commute to downtown. And if you don't have to commute to downtown, why pay for those expensive homes in inner counties? Go further out. And hence, the outlying suburbs, especially the big cities like Philadelphia, now people can go to Wilmington and live in Wilmington, or even the next county. I know there's only 3 counties in Delaware, but people can live further and further out. In Washington, of course, you have to cross that bridge, so that's one bottleneck. But people say, well, why don't I just work Thursday and Friday out in the beach home, knowing that I don't have to commute to the downtown DC. So suburbs are doing relatively better. Inventory remains still very low, but we may have turned the corner. Spring of next year, you may actually say we have more inventory in spring 2022 next year than spring 2021. So I know this year was very tight, but at least you can say next year, according to my forecast, it could be wrong, but based on what I'm seeing, I think we may have turned a corner on inventory, and that's a good thing. It will tame the price growth, give first-time buyers a little chance, and also just more choices. You want to excite the consumer with more choice availability. Why do I believe the inventory will rise? Well, for 2 reasons, 2 key reasons. One is we may begin to see some of the people who have been in mortgage forbearance period give up their property. It does not have to be short sales or foreclosure property. So the top line that you see here is people who are delinquent on their mortgages for more than 90 days, 3 months. Back in 2008, when the subprime lending blew up, you see how fast the mortgage delinquency increased. And that caused foreclosures to increase. So you had a lot of foreclosure properties. This time around, foreclosures are not rising because of the federal support program on the mortgage forbearance. So you lost job, you can document it, you don't have to pay mortgage. Whatever missed payment will simply be added on to the life of the loan later. So it's not a free lunch, but at least it's postponed. And hence the foreclosure has really not started. But that program is beginning to wind down. I think some people who went into the program, say in March of last year, maybe they're forced to come out now. People who went into the program in December, they may have a few additional months. I forget the exact date line on that. But we still see large number of people who are delinquent. And some of these people may simply say, look, home ownership is not for me. I don't have the job. and therefore I have to sell my home. So, we hope that people do find jobs that don't have to sell, but I think some of the properties will come onto the market. Not a flood, but, some degree of inventory showing up as people switch out of the federal program, and now they said, I'm going to sell my home. It does not need to be short sale or foreclosure sale because prices have risen so much, people may have equity and therefore they can do a normal home sale. So this is the first reason why I see why inventory will be higher spring of next year. Here's another reason. Builders are building more. I know each community is different, but the statistic is showing after 15 years of underproduction, the builders producing well below historical average from 2007 all the way up to pre-pandemic, way below average. Why is there inventory shortage in Wilmington? Why is there inventory shortage out in the beach towns? Well, because the cumulative effect of underproduction is happening everywhere. In my area near Washington, D.C., Middle America, Indianapolis, Kansas City, inventory shortage. So it's widespread because home builders have been underproducing for multiple consecutive years. But based on the data, this year in 2021, it looks like they are going to break out above average, and next year even more. Builders, they build it, they're making good profit. There's a profit incentive, economic reasoning as to why they want to build, so I think they will continue to build. I know there are some challenges with material costs, finding the skilled construction workers, all that part, but the momentum is there, so incrementally we will be producing more. New development is that rents are beginning to rise strongly. Right now, the Wall Street, their appetite is rising for single-family rentals. I know this competes with the first-time buyers, but the Wall Street hedge funds, private equity are salivating at the fact that rents are rising and people want that single-family style living. So a townhouse, I'm not sure if you are seeing in that area, but I'm hearing more frequently in the DC area, out in the suburbs. Townhouse, say 1 hour away from DC, is listed rent $1,500 per month. And what do you know? 10 people show up. So it's not trying to find a renter, it's that 10 renters want that property. And they're outbidding each other, saying, oh, 1,500, I will give you 1,600. Hey, I will give you 1,700. So there is a multiple bidding on rents because we are facing housing shortage, not only to buy, but the vacancy rate. An apartment is falling and single family rental property, it is seeing a surge in demand. Maybe it is due to the fact that people who got outbid in trying to buy a home, they're saying time out. Let's wait another year, 12 months. So let's sign a fresh lease. But they are leasing single family properties and as the multiple rental bid that is occurring in some community in the country. Let me now turn to the monetary policy, what you can expect regarding mortgage rates. Mortgage rates will rise. It's inevitable. We were lucky to have this 3% record low mortgage rate, but it's ending. All indication is that mortgage rates will be rising. The red line shows the average mortgage rate, currently averaging around 3%. The green line is the Federal Reserve in Washington. They have cut their rates, something called Fed funds rate, all the way down to zero. The 0% interest rate is not for you and me. It is for the banking system. But that filters into the system, and hence the mortgage rates are at all-time high. But taper tantrum will be the first element of the rising rates. So what is taper tantrum? Well, when your clients get a mortgage from Citibank, from Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or local mortgage broker, they're originating those mortgages knowing they can sell it to Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie, in turn, can sell those mortgages to Federal Reserve. So it's like a hot potato. You originate it, sell it, get the cash, and make the next mortgage. So they're constantly selling it. But the Federal Reserve is essentially saying they will stop buying mortgage-backed securities, MBS. They will stop buying, which means Fannie and Freddie has to find other buyers. Is it the Chinese government, Goldman Sachs, Wall Street Company, Delaware Teachers Union Pension Fund? Well, they have to find some other buyers, but in order to find that other buyers, they have to offer higher interest rates. And that higher interest rate will filter down to the consumer. So that will be the first element, and it may begin to happen later this year. People are saying November is probably the likely. Another negative, Federal Reserve will increase their green line. Let me go to the prior chart. This green at 0, they will begin to increase this to some positive amount in 2022. It's more for signaling to say that the maximum liquidity policy is over. Please be prepared. But they're also raising the short-term interest rate because inflation is getting out of hand and they want to tame in some of the inflation. Another negative is that as part of the infrastructure package that the Senate passed about a month ago, we don't know what the final package will be. House of Representatives and the Senate are arguing over what the final package will be. Joe Manchin versus AOC. They are trying to determine what it will be. President Biden is saying just send it along. He wants to sign it and make it into a law. So we don't know what the final bill will be, but the one that the Senate had passed essentially has that infrastructure spending package financed partly by raising the GP. GP is what Fannie and Freddie charges the mortgage brokers. So your mortgage broker may tack on additional $200, $300 to originate those mortgages. And of course, consumers are paying that. So that's another negative. But one positive development going into 2022 is that rental payment history will be used to qualify for the mortgage. The basic idea is that if someone does not have a down payment, but say a person can make $1,000 per month in rent, surely if they were to take out a mortgage that goes into about $1,000 per month in mortgage payment, they can make that payment. So they will consider rental payment history as a guide to how they qualify for the mortgage. So at least that is a positive development. Now, the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates next year for sure because consumer prices are rising and it looks to stay high. I remember back in March when inflation began to pop out, Federal Reserve White House said, no worries, it's going to disappear. Well, it's not disappearing. It's hanging around for a much longer period, which is the reason why Federal Reserve is signaling they will have to raise interest rate in 2022. So inflation becoming much strong. You know, the gasoline prices are high. Realtors drive around frequently. It's hitting your pocketbook right away. But, you know, other items, the price of bacon is high. You know, all the food items are high. So we are seeing a much higher inflation. But because of inflation, some of the ordinary population may be wondering, if there is an inflation, how do I protect myself? Do I buy gold? Do I buy cryptocurrency? What do I do in times of inflation? Well, one metric is that real estate has always proven to be a good hedge against inflation. Let's look at 1970s. Average consumer prices every year were rising 7.1%. During that period, home values rise close to 10% a year. It's a good hedge. 1980s, roughly the same. If you remember 1980, especially 1981, 82, for someone who's been in the business for a long, long period, mortgage rate, 18%. How in the world can you do business with 18% mortgage rate? Well, there were virtually very few transactions because high interest rate cut the sales. But home prices did not decline because the rents were rising strongly along with the consumer price inflation. So decade by decade is proving that real estate is a good hedge against inflation. So just in case you see some about consumers, you have some side conversation about inflation, you can mention that real estate has always proven to be a good hedge against inflation. Let me now turn to the job market and wrap it up with a forecast. So the total jobs in the US before pandemic is the first three bars. Then we had the lockdown, people working at the hotel, restaurant, completely let go. 20 million job losses. Since that time, with each passing month, little more jobs. But we are not yet back to normal. You see that we still need a few additional million jobs to get us back up to normal. If we look at state-by-state comparison, latest data versus pre-pandemic, what we are finding is that there are only 3 states with more jobs now compared to pre-pandemic: Idaho, Utah, Arizona. Many Californians are fleeing the state and they're going into these states, they're creating jobs. And also the governors in these states essentially kept the economy fairly open and certainly consider real estate to be essential so people can do the transactions. By contrast, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, your neighboring states, had a larger job declines because governors in these states had a more stricter lockdown. Delaware, the first state, well, it's too small to put the numbers there, so you have to go to that little side. So you see Massachusetts, Connecticut, and you go down, and you see Delaware down 2.7%. So Delaware is actually doing slightly better than nation. I think the nationwide, we're down 3%, so holding on relatively well, but you are still negative. But it may be another 2 or 3 months before Delaware turns positive. But there is a variation across the country as to which states suffer more versus others. Job market is not fully back up, but job openings are at a record high. I think everyone is experiencing, you go to a restaurant, it takes a little longer for the servers to arrive. It takes longer to the server to bring the food. Please be patient. They're doing their best. I know that people are now becoming a little more hostile at a restaurant or airport, but they're short on staff. But job openings are at a record high. Now, some people may say these are low-wage industry jobs. Yes, they are having a hard time finding, waiters and waitresses, people at the hotel. But also remember, there are job openings in computer programming, job openings in accounting, job openings surely in construction. So, it's all across record high in terms of job openings. So the forecast is that 2021 annual total sales, once December is finished, you will see that home sales in 2021 was meaningfully higher compared to 2020. And you say, wait a minute, didn't you just say that surge is over? Last year we had a surge, now this year we don't have the surge. So why is this? This year we have 12 months of sales activity. Last year we had the lockdown, and that is why the annual totals will be meaningfully higher. But 2022 sales are coming down. Please be mindful. Don't spend all your commission income. Save it for the rainy days. Some decline in home sales activity in 2022 because of higher mortgage rates. So even though jobs are being created overall, so that's the nationwide forecast. But one wild card for Delaware especially out on the vacation resort areas, is that office leasing is one sector of the economy refusing to recover. So job market is recovering, economy is recovering, but not office spaces. They're continuing to put more spaces out into availability. Commercial members who specialize in office, it's a tough go market, a very, very tough market. But when we see where people are changing address, it is not towards DC or towards Philadelphia. Number 1, Barnstabletown, Massachusetts. That's Cape Cod. So people from Boston and New York, they're going to Cape Cod. Portland, Maine. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Asheville, North Carolina. Resort town in the mountains, Wilmington, North Carolina. If you look at the map, nothing is popping up in Delaware. But the point is, maybe you don't see it among the top markets, but surely you are seeing more change of address to the beach town along the Delaware because people are essentially saying, I don't have to work in office. I am going to work from vacation homes. So this trend, I think, will steadily build up. There's a natural inertia for human beings. You do the same thing today as you did yesterday. But as people begin to realize they don't have to go back to office, Price Waterhouse making that big announcement, work from anywhere, I think people will say, why am I living so close to Washington, D.C. when I can buy a larger size home out in Delaware? So I think this trend will steadily build in 2022, 2023, and it's going to be quite a transformation regarding, what happens between the cities, offices versus the vacation resort towns. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you, and thank you for listening. Now I am going to turn it back over to Wesley.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation, as always. Some things that stood out to me is it's good to hear that builders are finally building more. We can definitely see that throughout our state right now. Let's hope inflation comes under control a bit. And I think one of the slides that definitely stood out the most for me is the one about wealth, about renters having $8,000 compared to homeowners around $297,000. I know we're going to work on finding those numbers to make sure we got the correct numbers here in Delaware. I think that's vitally important to use in our advocacy efforts to fight for affordable and attainable housing throughout the state. So that's a huge gap that we got to figure out a way to close and encourage our legislators to help us find solutions to make that happen. So thank you again. I really appreciate your time today, and I know our members appreciate you joining us too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.